January 28th, 2041. Hey, book friend. It's been a few days. How have you been? Dumb question, I suppose. Stuck in my pack and jostled around endlessly probably isn't great. Then again, after seeing all this terrible shit, it might not be so bad. Actually, there was another guy I saw stare at the sky for too long. People tried to stop him, but he got violent when disturbed. After 2 days, he took a box cutter to his own eyes and started talking in some strange language. That lasted all of 5 seconds before the guy who was on shift to watch him made the executive decision to introduce a live round to his temple. I don't think I prefer that either. Survivor rule number 73. When all options are fucked, pick the one that seems possibly slightly less fucked. Okay, I made that one up. But maybe we should start a numbered list of rules. Well, I suppose rules only work if there's order. That shit doesn't exist beneath the quilted sky. Anyway, I know you know I'm stalling. I always do that when there's some shit I don't want to talk about. But for fuck's sake, can anything happen that isn't horrible? We will talk about it tomorrow. I wish I could just forget about it. But it's important for you reading this, whoever you are, to know. I'm sure if you're alive to read this, you already know. But we shouldn't take that chance. The risk is another sleepless night, which undoubtedly awaits me. The reward is potentially life-saving knowledge. Hopefully for you, a fellow survivor and keeper of my friend. I'm so tired. I've covered so many miles, and I haven't slept in days. I ran into a group of survivors a few days ago. Actually, they don't get to be called that. They weren't survivors. They were takers. The worst kind of people. Besides, they didn't all survive. We'll talk about it later. For now, I'm going to try and rest my tired body. Good night, survivor. January 29th, 2041. Good evening, book friend. I almost mean that. We had some pretty good luck today. I spent all of yesterday moving as fast and as far as I could. I wanted to put as much distance between me and those takers as possible. I've been jogging and speed walking for more hours than I have in quite a while. I've almost forgotten the feeling of resting with the slightest amount of relaxation. I don't know that I've ever actually relaxed, on account of everything in this world wanting to kill me. But when things, ironically in this case, people, are actively trying to kill you for days on end, the idea that something somewhere may want to kill you is a bit relaxing in relative comparison. That's so fucked. Well, fuck. Let's get into it. Just a few more acts of evil forced upon me by the denizens of the gods' earth. As you remember, I was hightailing out of that town where we'd met our friendly neighborhood Mr. Fuzzyfuck. He wanted to meet us so bad, but we just couldn't find the time, could we, book friend? And then he, well, So we kept going, trying to put as much distance between us as possible. A few nights back, I found a small shack among the skeleton trees a ways off the road. The sky was fussing for the past few hours. so I had a pretty good inclination that it was going to rain. Sometimes the rain isn't just rain. Other things fall from the sky as well. Rocks, rock-sized chunks of ice, rusty bits of metal. Fuck. Once I saw rotten chunks of meat falling from that hell. I don't know, book friend. Don't ask me to explain that shit. Clearly above my pay grade. Another old world idiom. Apparently people used to go to jobs where they'd trade their time doing relatively meaningless tasks in exchange for paper or numbers in their computers that they could then trade for food and accommodations. Don't ask me, book friend. So, while it wasn't quite dark yet, I figured better to get under shelter than to be pelted with who knows what. It turned out that I was right about the rain. It started falling pretty hard soon after, though it seemed to be just water this time. I lay in the empty small wood structure, head on my pack, staring up at the leaking ceiling. It wasn't leaking on me, so I didn't mind. Actually, the pattering on the wood was kind of nice, mixed in with the thundering, flooding skies. Before I knew it, my heavy eyelids lost their battle to gravity, and I had dozed off. A vague dream where I struggled against some unknown and unbeatable force plagued me, keeping my heart rate up and my senses sharp. My eyes snapped open as I heard the faint deviation mixed in with the rain. My senses were screaming danger. I learned a long time ago not to ignore this instinct. I can't even tell you how many times it saved my life. Silently, I was up with my pack in hand, heading towards the corner of the room. As you know, survivors always have several plans and several exits. This small shelter had only one door. So, where was I going to go, you ask? Good question, and let this be a lesson to you. In the back corner was some pretty rotten floorboards. Earlier that day, I had taken my hatchet and quite easily put a decent-sized hole in the floor. This hole went under the house and directly out the back into the open. I pried up one of the less rotten floorboards and fortified it against the door so that it would be difficult to open. The second part involved the rock face a few hundred feet behind the structure. There was a divot within the rocks where my body fit perfectly, where I hid one of my canvases I had spray painted to look like stone. The idea was, I'd stand in the divot with the canvas covering me, and in the night would be relatively difficult to spot for anyone not looking extremely close. And if I didn't need to use it, I'd go gather my supplies before I leave the next day. If I have to leave it, no huge loss either. Relatively easy to find material, and I have several. My pack was down the hole, and I was in after it. I didn't second guess myself, or pause to take a second to listen to make sure I wasn't acting prematurely. I acted, because that's what survivors do. Inaction is suicide. Trust your gut, survivor. The rain fell heavy as I slid my way out from under the house, immediately covered in mud. In this situation, I didn't mind. I was practically camouflaged in that dark, muddy environment. I stayed low and ran towards my rock wall hideout, planning to hunker down and get my bearings, assess the threat. I didn't even make it a third of the way before I heard the voices.
"You sure he's in there?"
One of them said.
"Yeah, he hasn't left. I've been sitting on this for hours."
A man replied.
All right, men.
The first voice spoke up.
Surround the area. Don't want them getting away. This should be a nice and easy grab. And try to keep them alive. Slaves are worth far more than corpses.
By the time I heard pounding on the door, I was pushing myself into the rocks and slowly covering myself in the canvas. There was a small area I had scratched thin that I placed over my eyes so that I could see out. The next minute happened so fast, it's hard to recall exactly how it happened, but I can give you the short of it. One of the men going around back must have noticed me move, or thought he did, because he cautiously started making his way towards my hiding spot. Several of the takers had lights. Most didn't. The one heading towards me didn't. So far, I had counted 4, including the one I couldn't see banging on the door and shouting threats. But I was sure there was more right behind that one. The man got closer and closer, my heart almost beating in tandem with the rapid pounding on the door. He was only a few feet away from me. The pounding continued. I guess I braced the door pretty good. The man looked all around before noticing one of my footprints. Fuck, was all I could think. Clearly struggling to see, the man followed my steps until he was standing just in front of me. He scratched his head, looking up and down. I readied myself. Then he noticed my eyes through the canvas. Our gaze locked, and his eyes went wide. I saw him tense as he took a breath in to yell for backup. I didn't let him. My right hand shot up, burying my knife into his throat, while my left hand followed to cover his mouth. The fight left him almost immediately as I slowly lowered his falling body to the ground, warm blood spilling over my hand as his heart pumped for the last few times. You never get used to that look when the light leaves their eyes. That last moment of realization that there won't be any more moments. It chips away at me every time. Yeah, book friend. This wasn't the first man I've killed. I don't want to talk about the others right now, but just know, I didn't want to do it. I never wanted to do it. But sometimes a bad world makes bad people. Or at least that's how my mom explained it. I promise, it has always been and will always be in self-defense and self-preservation. I will give myself to bad people just as soon as I give myself to the false gods. You know how I feel about that. I unslung the man's shotgun and threw it over my shoulder and quickly took his waist bag, securing it without having time to check its contents. I wasn't planning on keeping the weapon, but looking at the situation, could you blame me for grabbing a little extra? At this point, everything had changed. I had passed what we call the point of no return. These men clearly wished evil upon me, and that was before I'd killed one of them. What do you think they'd do now if they got their hands on me? I wasn't going to wait around to find out. I moved against the rock wall slowly away from the building the men still surrounded and beat on the door. I could hear the wood cracking. With a practiced movement, I reached into the side compartment of my pack and removed a modified oil filter, of which I kept several. A survivor had shown me how to make these long ago, and they are relatively easy to find. They don't have to be new or in perfect condition to work either. I threaded the makeshift suppressor onto the barrel of my handgun as quietly as I could, all the while still moving slowly away. These don't last too many shots, but I can't tell you how big of a difference even one suppressed shot can make. I had nearly made my way into a medium gathering of bushes a few 100 feet away from the building when I heard the wood of the front door splinter. A few seconds later, the man who'd been giving the orders started yelling to spread out and search the area, that I couldn't have gone far. Unfortunately, he wasn't wrong, as I was hunched down in the bushes not far away. With the 3 lights I could see, and the voices in the dark I could separate as distinct, I was counting 6 more men. But I was pretty sure there was even a few more. They were all yelling back and forth to each other, sweeping the area in an increasing circle. My heart pounded as one of the men with the light came increasingly closer to my hiding spot. He scanned the ground from left to right as he closed in on me. 50 feet. 25 feet. 10 feet. He was just in front of me. I could smell his stinking body. His light about to shine on me through the mostly leafless foliage. Then, one of them discovered the man I'd killed and started yelling. The man in front of me looked back at the commotion, giving me 1 second, 1 chance. A breath in, I raised my hands. A steady exhale. I squeezed the trigger. The muffled pop, more of a hiss among the falling rain. The man fell forward, dead before he hit the ground, and in the next instant I dragged his body into the bushes with me. I quickly killed his flashlight, stowing it in the side of my pack before grabbing the magazine from his rifle and finding 2 more in his pockets. I wasn't ready to move yet, so might as well take what I can, right? Evidently, the erratic movement of the flashlight had caught the attention of another man a little ways away. He cautiously moved forward, calling the man's name. I'll not repeat it. A man's name should die with him, unless he does something worth being remembered. This one was on high alert, cautious and searching. He wouldn't get too close, scouting the edges of the bushes. I couldn't take the chance. He was about 12 feet away when I squeezed off 2 shots to his chest. He wheezed feebly as I pulled him into the bushes by his ankles. 1 final bloody gurgle signaled his departure from this world. The only thing he had worth taking in that split instant was the magazine in his holstered sidearm. I surveyed the immediate area for another few seconds before determining that there was no one close enough to see me. So this is the part where I exited out the back of the bushes and ran like the fuck. The rain continued to fall. This day, it smelled of death. I'm pretty good at running, book friend. I've done a lot of it. And that night, I did a lot more. I'd run for a few miles at a time before finding somewhere to get out of the rain and catch my breath. It's always good to listen as well. Fucks, human or immortal, aren't best known for their subtlety. An attentive survivor can often stay a few steps ahead by simply paying attention. I was pretty sure that I put enough distance between us by morning, but I was also pretty sure that I didn't want to be wrong. I've dealt with men like that before, and one of their defining traits is holding a grudge. All I can do is move and be ready. Thankfully, in my haste, I didn't encounter anything more dangerous than the takers. Well, I'm still tired. I think I'm gonna call it an early night. We'll talk soon. Good night, Survivor.